This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Once again, we have this democratic salutation, and this time we're not going to make any reference to the time of the day, because the time of the day is your time of the day when you are listening to this message, this conversation, which is taking place between Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley, the voice of Respectonomics, and Sarah Benton, my co-host. And I will give you one clue that we are in the morning of the rural grounds of Ontario. So I will say very safely, good morning.
Good morning, Jeremy.
Yeah. And we hope everybody else is either having or had a good morning. This
Yes.
morning, this conversation discussion, we're going to be talking about a word that we've heard bandied around and around and around. And the expression is AI, artificial intelligence. And
Yeah.
as I dug into it, I found out that, first of all, AI is or artificial intelligence is probably quite misleading. Intelligence is a quality that belongs to the human being. And you know how you love your Latin?
I love your Latin, yes.
Oh, well, now I feel empowered. I feel enabled. No, but intelligence comes from the Latin intelligo, which means I understand. And there's something very strange. There's a contradiction that artificially something can understand what we humanly understand. I think there's a contradiction between, in other words, the human qualities of the way we behave to one another, and somebody saying, well, here's an artificial approach. And my experience with artificial or synthetic, anything that's artificial or synthetic doesn't usually match up to the original article. I mean, we find out wonderful ways now to grow new crops, and we do it artificially or synthetically, however you'd like to say, with computer-assisted whatevers. And one of the comments that comes back is, you buy a tomato today, and a lot of people will say, it doesn't taste like a tomato any longer. Or the apples, whatever it is. Artificial has a certain degree of, it ain't the real thing. And I think what we need to understand with this AI issue is I've actually renamed it. I've got two renamed for it. One of them is one of them is accurate indifference. And the reason I call it accurate indifference is AI is brilliant at coming out with explicit information, but it's indifferent to me. It doesn't really care about me. It just throws the information out.
And the emotion.
Yeah, exactly. And the other one I like is accidental insurance, because anytime you buy a car or you get into a house or something, somebody in the insurance world talks about accidental insurance. Now, accidents have two sides to them. There's bad accidents when people get hurt and maimed, and there's good accidents when we make amazing discoveries. And we go, wow, look at that. And then we truthfully look at each other and say, I found that out by accident. It happened. So, and the insurance part of it is, we need to insure ourselves against the risks of AI. This is not a straightforward, here's your encyclopedia, here's the information, do enjoy its results. It has, first of all, it's a very shapeless kind of new technology. If you ask people, what is it?
What do you mean by shapeless?
What's that?
What do you mean by shapeless?
It's very hard to define it. It exists at very different levels in different places. It's probably best described as being an algorithm, because what it does is it takes all the pieces of information around the globe and all the pieces that have ever been produced and brings them all together. You know, if you have a snowstorm and an airplane gets delayed, have you noticed how that delays the flights in Rome or something way distant.
Yeah.
And you think, how on the earth does that connect to the snowstorm in Buffalo? Well, because
Mhm.
algorithmically, all of these are connected. And in
Right.
one sense, AI does a fantastic job of bringing all these threads together. It's like a tapestry. It's beautiful, brings all these ideas together. The snag is with AI is number one, you can't be absolutely certain that it's telling you the truth. And the reason you can't be certain it's telling you the truth is because you do not know what it's actually been programmed or has been given to how to behave. And that can be just a straightforward interpretation. That's fine. But what about the malicious approach, where somebody parasitically believes if we frame it this way, we will get more people to go this way, which is beneficial to me? In other words, it can be very what's the word? Insidious. It can be dishonest. The Economist, in the latest publication on AI, has a brilliant picture of all these sort of computer symbols and everything in the shape of a human being. But that human being has one hand behind his, I guess behind his back with fingers crossed. So, in other words, to represent the idea that the information isn't necessarily as pure as one would like. So I think we
Mm.
have to be on guard. If you look at a picture of somebody, I've got one here on my wall actually, and it's a picture of me dressed in full regal uniform of Edward the Seventh, and I do look rather good, if I may say so. But, obviously it's photoshopped, and
Right.
you and we all know the risks of photoshopping because you can look at something and you think it's good, bad, or indifferent, and then you find out that it's not the real photograph. Um,
Right.
so with that in mind, if we can Photoshop a picture, think how easily now AI can Photoshop information and
Mm.
make it look like the real McCoy when it really isn't, or
Right.
give it definitions or give it interpretations that are not realistic. This is not to say that AI doesn't have a place.
Right.
It's a constant human endeavor. We are by definition, we are people who pioneer. We are the ones who go exploring. And I mean, if you think about it, Musk is trying to get us to go to Mars to have a look around. And part of that, you'd say, really? But at the same time, it is part of that exploratory DNA that's in the
Mm.
human being. It's how things get
For
discovered. What's that?
Yes. For
I'm sorry.
centuries.
Yeah, it's been for centuries. It's been for a long time. So I think we should be honest about AI in the sense that it's exploratory, it's expanding our realms of understanding, and it is taking many, many um, ways that we produce, the way we live, and bringing them to, frankly, to a robotic platform. Because if it's true that AI can tell us all these things, that AI can also feed the robot. Now, that raises a very interesting point because there's many endeavors, human endeavors, that probably can be replaced by AI. And I mean, you can let your mind go loose. And we've always done this. It's not new. People say, "Oh, we shouldn't be taking away people's jobs." We've been taking away people's jobs since the Ark because we're
Right.
always looking for ways to produce more with less. My favorite
Efficiency.
example was the day we came out with the plow. We come out with a plow that can now till the land, cultivate the land, and we turned to the 25 laborers who had their forks and spades, and we told them to get lost because
Right.
the plow's going to do it. But what's the key behind all new technology is that we need to understand is that it will displace. It is what's the word? Not destructive, but it's intrudes on our the way we do things.
Yeah.
No question about it. But it always releases new ways of doing things. I've
Right.
used this example before, but I'll use it again. The VCR seemed like a brilliant way to package movies and get information around and so on, which is true. But what it really did was it boosted Hollywood. So
Mm.
you have to look at these things as being what they liberate us, they free us up to do other things. I mean,
Right.
there's some horrendous numbers going around at the moment. One of them is, can't remember his name, but he's an investor from many, many years ago and successful. And he pointed out that he thinks that a lot of the work we do, 40% of the work we do, will within the foreseeable future be taken over by AI.
Mm.
So you think about, but although that has horrible sort of sense of destruction in it, we also need to understand that's what actually frees us up to go and do other things.
I was just going to say, do you think that displacement then will land people in different opportunities that
Absolutely. Absolutely.
either A are created
But
or B
yeah,
born
but
away?
here's the nub of the problem. It is true. I think all of us would agree that the AI is going to displace jobs in one place or another. And most of us are quite selfish and we think it's your job that's going to be displaced, not mine.
Right.
Well, the truth of the matter is all of us are
Disposable.
targets. Yeah, we're all disposable.
Yes.
Good word.
Our jobs are disposable.
Our jobs are disposable, exactly.
We are not.
But
Yeah.
one of the things that's happening, and artificial intelligence has one huge risk to it, and that is it runs the risk of dumbing us down.
Mm.
And that is, we all know that if you've got a problem or a question and you just press a button, there's the answer. That process becomes addictive. It's
Yes.
very, very easy. And that's why the other expression for AI is addictive intelligence. Because do you remember when the BlackBerry came out and the word that started making the rounds was crackberry? And
Right.
you do see that in many regards of people getting very addicted to these processes. If you're ever at a dinner table, have you noticed how many people have their iPhone on the table? And not only on the table, but they start actually referencing it. You ask an innocent question like, when did the Mayflower set sail? And what you really want to talk about is what was the process of the Mayflower coming here? What was the reason behind it? What were the religious issues and so on? Well, somebody brings out their iPhone and says the date was,
Right.
14 something or other. And the problem with that is it closes down the conversation. AI is a brilliant capacity builder. It builds capacity, but at the same time, it destroys capacity because it can shut people down. And I think to go to your point, which is that let's say people are being displaced out of their work. If you feel subdued or repressed or just not valued, which is
Mhm.
an expression or a combination that we've talked about many times, when you have that human profile, that makes it very difficult to see what is your next twist, next turn, next game to be. Very
Right.
difficult. So, in other words, we have to be very sure that AI is not seen as we want to make sure that it is seen to be a servant and not a master.
Mm.
So, this again goes back to the awareness issue that we can't look at AI as being the be all and the end all. It
Right.
has some wonderful attributes to it. It brings
Well, it's
algorithms.
a tool and a resource for us.
I beg your pardon?
It's a tool and a resource for us.
Absolutely. It's a tool. But it must not be allowed to become the master or the mistress of our lives. And I think with that, there is one of the most difficult things about AI. I said at the beginning, it's amorphous. It's something doesn't really have shape. And even if it did have shape, there are too many jurisdictions in the world where it is being created or where it's being applied. And if you go to that whole sense of the human being want to one up itself on somebody else, we have to look at AI with a certain amount of not skepticism, but a certain degree of concern that
Mhm.
we are not being hijacked or we're not being diluted, we're not being
Right.
removed from our
Again, look at it as how it can complement,
yeah.
right? Or enhance.
Yeah, and I think the enhancement you're talking about is very valuable. I mean, if you think in the medical field, the ability now to gather together all of the information and the scientific technology and so on, and bring it all together is absolutely incredible. So I think from a broad human point of view, the aspiration of artificial intelligence is wonderful. I don't think I have seen a clear definition of its purpose. And
Mm.
until we get a definition of its purpose, then we don't really have the mechanism to bring in the accountability, the governance that needs to go with it. So defining its purpose is a job for, I'll say, the government, because I can't think of who else can do it. But it needs to be defined far more clearly. Now, sorry, you were going to
Oh,
say.
go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to talk about is that when I look at the human being, there are two things that strike me. One is we all have dreams. And
Mhm.
I'm not talking about the nightly dream when you sort of
Right.
thought about the dog racing across the park or something. But I'm talking about those dreams we have that are sort of like aspirations.
Okay.
They're not goals exactly. They could be a sort of compass. They could be a place we'd love to be. And dreams are exotic. They're wonderful. They're beautiful. And the snag is that dreams can get snubbed partly by people who say, well, in your dreams,
Right.
push down, push down. And then, of course, the other one is with something like AI that comes out and says, in a very material, physical sense, you can't do that. It won't work. Well, there's plenty of things in life that won't work, which actually do.
Right.
I mean, the bumblebee aerodynamically should not fly. Well, it does it rather well, rather beautifully. So
Mm.
the issue we're dealing with here is that we want to make sure that the dreams. If you notice with children, how they talk about their dreams, their aspirations, what they want to be, what they want to do,
Mhm.
and how many times have we said the tragedy with a child is the imagination gets snuffed out?
Right.
We
Over
know
time,
this.
experience.
Yeah, we know it. So our job, in fact, is where AI is concerned, is to be on guard, that we revisit this concept of the human being. And we've talked about this. In other words, not only am I going to have my dreams, not am I going to have my personal insights into life, but also I have an identity. I think under the heading of AI, but under the heading of respectonomics generally, I think I should be able to stand in front of the mirror every morning, every part of the day, actually, and just say, I am Jeremy. Um, so we've talked about identity, we've talked about dreams. We've, I think, explored the idea of the way in which we get robotically controlled by AI.
Mhm.
And I've come up with three things that I think are important of how do we counter AI? I mean, we've talked about the awareness of it and so on. We've talked about its aspirations. We've talked about how powerful it can be. But the power is one, of course, that can be either symbiotic, builds us up, or it can be parasitical and it feeds on us and destroys us.
Right.
And I've come up with three things that I think are important.
Okay.
The first one that I want to talk about is put away your iPhone. And you've heard that 100 times. Put away your iPhone, start talking to your neighbors and all this stuff. Well, actually, I've got another reason for putting away your iPhone. Have you noticed when you're at a sports event or an event anyway, have you noticed how everybody gets out their iPhone and starts going click, click, click?
Yes.
And have you also noticed that when you go click, 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 those photographs are the same as everybody else's for a start, and you never look at them again?
Mhm.
And if you are taking them, there's a horrible part of us that says, I'm taking this photograph so I can show it to everybody else. Here I am shaking hands with King Charles. So I want a photograph of that so I can show everybody. It's not a very ethically, morally, whatever you'd say. It's not
A lot
exactly.
of times when we're doing that as well, we're missing you're so focused on taking the photo and having the photo
Yeah.
look right that
Hmm.
you're actually missing the
The
moment,
point. Hmm.
the feeling of the moment or being present in that moment altogether,
I
right?
want to talk about just that. And that is that David, who's part of the Dignity Trust, and one of his great shticks is when you're in front of something that is extremely beautiful, it might be architectural, it might be landscape, it might be some art form, but you stand in front of it and you start taking a picture of it in your own mind.
Mm,
And that picture in your own mind means not only focusing on the angles and the shades and the shadows and so on, but you think in terms of where you're standing at that particular point. You
mhm,
think in terms of the sounds, you think, I mean, this morning I was looking over the Beaver Valley and I was doing this test on myself and looking at the differences between the various bodies of water that I was looking at.
mm,
One was a little pond, one was a little puddle, one was Georgian Bay itself, and
right.
looking at the contrasts between them all. And one of the things I did was to start thinking about what are the sounds I can hear? Here I am in this situation. What are the sounds? And there were two sounds. One was the fridge. You know how it makes that whirring sound?
Yeah.
I don't know what it's doing, but anyway. And the other one was, and I don't think everybody will know this one, was the snoring dog.
It's fun.
She snores. But that was the sound in the background. But what I'm getting at is framing that picture in one's mind is a
Mhm.
very, very valuable way of taking what we are all about and not relying on something artificially to say, this is what it is. And because
Call
I'm
that mind
sorry.
map. You've referred to it. Is it mind mapping?
Well, mind mapping is an extension of that. Mind mapping is probably one of the most important personal activities we can engage in. And it means taking out a white sheet of paper and a pencil or a pen or a stylus if you really want. But what it means is this: you take a word or an idea, and then you let your mind map where can that word lead you.
Mm,
So
okay.
if you wrote down water, you might write down glass. You might write down lake. You might write down rain. But you let your mind go free to mind map, to look at all the possibilities that come out of one word or one idea. And that's a very expansive way of us understanding what we know internally. But AI can very quickly suffuse, it can repress. So it's allowing us the full benefits of everything we are to express an idea to ourselves. And I say water, I mean, you might say, wash your hands. It's
Mm,
it's a game we used to play as children. Do you remember you'd write down a word and then you'd pass it on to the next child and they would write something else down and you'd go around the room with 12 children or something. And at the end of it all, you'd find out what was the last word. Well, of course, it had nothing to do with the first one. But that, in a sense, is its beauty. But you can do that. I can do that with myself. I think it's brilliant. Mind mapping. And it's very personal and it's intuitive. It brings together everything that is in our being, the body, the mind, and the soul. Bring them together and letting that formulate through either taking pictures, the way we've described, the picture in your own mind, or letting your mind become the way that it connects ideas and thoughts and words. They're both, and how much do these cost? Nothing.
right.
Yeah. And the last one we should talk about is, as you know, we have the Dignity Trust. And the
Yeah.
Dignity Trust is this group of people that is behind Respectonomics. It's its undergrowth, really. And what it does is it allows people to talk to one another without any pride of authorship, without any sense of judgment. It is, as Socrates would say, the importance of good debate is to apprehend the truth.
Right.
That's all we're trying to do is to take an idea. And you can talk about the weather, you can talk about AI, you can talk about politics, you can talk about anything you want, but just letting these words come into it. The reason it's called the Dignity Trust is because dignity is the cornerstone to respectonomics, and the trust is the importance in which we have been trusted with this dignity. This isn't just an idle gift from, that you got at 7 o'clock in the morning from the local grocery store. The dignity that's within each of us is one that absolutely needs the full sense of not only dignity, but trust. And one thing I recommend is having a small group. I can't believe, Sarah, how many people say to me when I'm having a conversation, and these are usually people outside of the Dignity Trust, but they say how lovely it is to be able to talk about these things. I don't have anybody else to talk to. And that's a tragedy when you think of a human being that is meant to work with another human being. You use the word collaborate.
Yes.
And when you have two people that are coming together, we all want to be part of a community. And we have it within ourselves to have this small group whereby we can come together and share ideas and let them percolate. Some are off the wall, some are very foundational. One thing I have found in the small group in this setting is the number of times we say something that's really, at one level, you'd say it's incredibly obvious.
Right.
And then people say, wow, I never thought of it that way.
Mhm.
So obvious is not the right word.
Right, right.
Yeah. But I've heard it, one of my buddies, Bill, has one great line, which is making the obvious obvious before it becomes obvious. And a small group is a very good way of harnessing those strengths.
Yes. Yeah, it's a beautiful format and forum,
I think so. And
and
greatly to be encouraged. And I mean, we can do it ourselves, but I think also the world of leadership, whether it's in the political arena or the corporate arena, the business arena, the faith arena, whatever it is, get small groups going.
yes.
From every walk, by the way, doesn't this is you don't put all the CEOs or something in the same room or all the metal workers in one room. No, mix and match. Life is a
Well, I was
kaleidoscope of
gonna say, if you think about it more from a mosaic, right?
yeah,
If you're coming from different vantage
yeah,
points
yeah,
or different arenas
yeah,
in life, it can
yeah,
sort of foster or develop a bigger
yeah.
perspective, right?
Well, I love your word mosaic because if you look at a mosaic and you go to one of those beautiful um, temples, let's say in Istanbul, and you look at the mosaics there, have you noticed the brilliant colors, the brilliant ways in which the pieces all sort of interconnect one with another,
Yeah. They'll come together.
come together to create a
Mhm.
wonderful picture.
That's right.
And the picture we have today is AI or not, artificial intelligence, addictive intelligence, whatever you want to call it. Let's all remember that the dignity of the human being runs ahead, wins the race all the time and every time. And on that, I rest my case.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Sarah.